is Keys to the Shop, episode 234, Actions and Strategies to Improve Your Messaging with Garrett Oden. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I hope you're having a really great day, and want to remind you to subscribe to Keys to the Shop and also share these episodes with a friend or with your team to spread the love and let this content get out far and wide. Thank you so much. I want to remind you also that Keys to the Shop is available for consulting and coaching for you and your business. If you're looking to open a coffee bar, expand your current operations, or just want to take your operations to the next level and need someone to provide clarity, direction, and strategy for your business and your team, I'd love to be able to talk with you and find out how Keys to the Shop might be of service. If you want to reach out to me to have an exploratory call about that, just email me, chris@keystotheshop.com. And I look forward to connecting with you and seeing how Keys to the Shop Consulting can help. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prima Coffee. Prima Coffee is one of the world's best specialty coffee equipment suppliers because they curate the best equipment from all over the world and match it perfectly with the needs of their customers. If you're looking to open a new cafe or open a second cafe or just upgrade the equipment that you've got right now, Prima Coffee is an amazing partner to work with in helping you get the right gear. When you go to their website over at prima-coffee.com, you'll see what I mean. Their selection is amazing, and also their resources on their website are amazing as well. They put a lot of work into creating free resources to help you brew better coffee, make latte art, use the equipment well. They're all about setting you up for success in your specialty coffee endeavors. That's why I love working with them, and I recommend that you work with them as well. A really great company and group of people to work with when you're looking for the best equipment and service to go along with that over at prima-coffee.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by the world's leader in plant-based performance beverages. That, of course, is Pacific Foods in their Pacific Barista Series. The Barista Series has taken the world by storm because the name performance beverage is not just a name, it's actually what it does. It performs excellently on your bar. They develop their range of products, whether that's almond, soy, coconut, rice, hemp, oat, with a lot of feedback from the barista community. They want to design these so that the people using it on the bar are excited to use it, and your customers are excited to drink it. You know, I think if you're looking for the best in plant-based options on your menu, then the Barista Series is the perfect fit for you. So if you would go to their website over at pacificfoodservice.com and explore the options, get these in your stores, taste them for yourself, you'll see what I mean. It's really an amazing product, fantastic company, and it shows in each and every cup. So again, visit them at their website, pacificfoodservice.com. And when you think about plant-based beverages, think the Barista Series from Pacific. Okay, well, today we get to talk about getting your coffee messaging on point. We're going to talk about some actions and strategies that are really going to set you up for success with how you communicate with people about who you are as a business, what you're all about, and really drive differentiation, which is really critical right now, especially as a lot of our brands are living online more than ever, and they are inundated with messaging from all over. So standing out is really going to be critical, and doing so in a very sustainable and unique, authentic way is also going to be critical. Now, to that end, I've invited on the show somebody who I think has a lot of great insights on the subject, and we're talking with Garrett Oden. Garrett is a coffee industry native who left the cafe to pursue coffee marketing. As a freelance copywriter and content strategist, he helps brands like Cafe Nero, Amavita Coffee, Alternative Brewing, and others across the industry to find and communicate meaningful messages to customers through website writing, content marketing, packaging, and beyond. I've really enjoyed Garrett's insights over LinkedIn. I think his way of talking about this and his way of understanding what's needed in the industry is clear, and it provides a lot of actionable steps for us to take to transform what I think, for a lot of us has been sort of a cobbled together strategy in terms of our marketing and messaging, and transform it into sort of a purposeful a foundational element, which is, like I said, one of the main things we should be focusing on right now, especially in this ever digitized world. So in this conversation, we're going to be talking a little bit about Garrett's history, diving into some of where he sees the problems in the industry now, how we got there, and then a few solutions that we talk in depth about that we can implement that will help us achieve great things with our messaging to our customers. So I know you're going to get so much out of this. Here now is my conversation about coffee messaging with Garrett Oden. Well, Garrett, welcome to Keys to the Shop. Glad to talk to you today. How's it been going?
Hey, Chris. It's going really well. I'm enjoying getting a lot of work done these last few months without a whole lot else to do.
Yeah, I mean, well, there is a lot to do because everything now is digital. And we're connecting over Instagram and any other channels that we have with our brand, and that's why I'm excited to talk to you about this because we've covered marketing in some facets and communication, but I have found your insights into this pretty compelling. You put out a lot of stuff on LinkedIn and other places that I think people really want to or should put into practice. And so I'm excited to dive into some of that today, some pretty practical stuff. But besides doing what you do now to help companies with their messaging and communication, I wonder, you have this unique intersection between coffee and this subject. So talk to us a little bit about your history in the industry and how that kind of parlayed into what you do now.
Yeah, so I started in coffee about 2012. I had kind of one of those eye-opening experiences where you try coffee and your kind of whole world changes. So before that, I had church coffee. Figured coffee was all just crazy bitter, and people just lied to themselves about liking it to just be cool or something. But had one of those experiences, was completely captivated. I started a little blog. I ended up working in the shop locally. Managed that shop, and at that time, there was only one other specialty coffee shop in the city that I was working in, and so we had really good coffee, and it was pretty easy to distinguish ourselves from all the other shops. There's lots of Starbucks, a few mom and pops that were kind of Starbucks-esque, and so it's pretty easy to say, well, our coffee is really, really exceptional. Also, we have pour overs. We pull our espresso, with the manual machine and all these kinds of things. So it was easy to distinguish ourselves. But by the time I was managing in, about 2016 or so, 2016, there were other shops popping up that also had really high quality coffee. And so saying we had the best coffee in town, and maybe we did still have the best coffee, but it didn't quite look quite as convincing to customers because they had other people other shops to go visit where they knew they could get good coffee. So I started thinking about, I was also running the website and the social media, both were very low effort, low priority, but I was trying to think of ways, how else do we distinguish ourselves? How else do we indicate to customers that we're worth coming to over the other shops that are popping up. And now there's 6, 7 really, really high quality shops in Lubbock, Texas, where I'm originally from. And so just going from having no competitors at one point to having a whole bunch of competitors who on a product quality level were right up there with us. I had to start thinking there's got to be some way to engage with people on a deeper level, because talking about quality is not quite enough. So that kind of inspired the curiosity and the fascination of trying to figure out better ways to message and market. But I really didn't fall into marketing until 2017. My wife and we didn't know what we wanted to do long term, but we both knew that we were ready for a change. So so I had some clients for blogging from my coffee blog and just from knowing people in the industry. And we both went remote and started our own businesses. And Did some traveling while working remotely abroad, so that was fun. And but it was kind of just a means to an end for a little bit. I didn't really consider myself so much a marketer. I still thought just a coffee person who was doing marketing for a little while. But the more and more I got into it, the more I realized that those problems I was experiencing at the coffee shop in my hometown are pretty widespread. And, just as an industry as a whole, there are some things that we don't do that other industries do that we could really stand to benefit from. So that kind of, that was that transformation. So I guess I've been full-time in as a copywriter, which was mostly marketing, writing, and content strategist for coffee and food technology businesses for a little over 3.5 years or so.
Awesome. So I was going to say, you've made it officially your profession when you're regularly, publishing LinkedIn articles and posts and things like that. It seems a milestone there just as you look back. But I love that you kind of had the experience so quickly, actually, of having differentiation and then having it taken away. Because most of people that I talk to are in the similar boat, which is this place doesn't have any good coffee and we're going to blow their socks off with great coffee. And that's great. But then you start to see that another person, like a former barista or somebody else from another town, that says, well, this place only has one coffee shop. I'm going to do something really awesome. And it goes, down the line like that. So it was easy to get differentiation for a while in the industry, and it became harder. And then you find places where it's not really taken hold, and then it was easy. But we don't really have any long-term strategies, it seems, or I would even say deep strategies for marketing and messaging to differentiate ourselves. And it seems like right now is the best time to lean into that, as most people are interacting with their local shops on a digital level like they never have before. So, when you think about the idea of digging ourselves out of a thing, or climbing out of the hole we've dug, rather, how would you define the problem that we're trying to solve here?
Yeah, well, I think there's a few problems. And so I think a big one is that, for those of us who have prioritized quality, we've been able to kind of ride that wave for, a couple decades. Especially coffee, was new, it was different, it was distinct, it was measurably more delicious. But for such a long time, it was easy to differentiate based on that, and it was easy to be different, it was easy to be special, because there just weren't a ton of other companies that were pursuing really, really high quality coffee like that. But yeah, my hometown of 250,000 people is, filled with incredible coffee now. So, as an industry, I think that wave has hit the beach, and we can't really ride it anymore. There's certainly some places where coffee, specialty coffee, is not quite saturated the market, and for those people, maybe they have a little bit longer to ride that wave. But I think for most of us, we have to be a little more creative. It's kind of like the first people to come to any sort of business model or marketplace or platform. They have it a little bit easier because they don't have quite so much competition. But once things get saturated, it's a lot more complicated, and it's just harder to stand out because there's so many people around. So, and I think it's evident in that we tend to rely on the same types of cliches. There's some kind of common tropes that you see very frequently from coffee companies that are sort of relics of being able to differentiate based on quality. So some of these are like roasted to perfection, or we travel the world to source the best coffee beans, and things like delivered straight to your door. There's a ton of these cliches that you could find on most coffee websites, and most social media pages at some point. And not that they're all bad, but that we're putting too much weight onto them typically. And from a customer perspective, when you go to a website and you see 9 out of 10 companies say our coffees are roasted to perfection, we source the best beans from around the world, it's kind of hard to differentiate and say why should I buy from any of these companies? They all say the same things. So, so we've relied a lot on that type of language that used to be meaningful and used to be different, but it's not quite so much anymore. And so we need to be able to think outside the box. But I think it's hard to think outside the box. And this is another problem, is that there's a culture of, it's kind of like the no true Scotsman thing, how, you were specialty coffee if you did X, Y, and Z. And, there are these kind of metrics that, these signals that you would use to identify if you were specialty coffee. And for such a long time, one of those core signals was that we focused on the quality and we didn't rely on gimmicks. So we didn't need to have the most caffeinated coffee. We didn't need to target a specific type of person. We didn't need to do any of these things that we look at, other businesses doing, and something that they do that maybe feels like it's a little cheap or gimmicky, and it's just like, well, it's all just coffee. Let's just focus on the highest quality coffee that we can. And I think that culture of prioritizing the quality above all else, just following along the same lines has kept us back a little bit from being a little more creative when we should have been probably a few years ago, kind of across the board, for at least in North America. So and I think it's really evident, and I see this all the time, is somebody will post a picture of their coffee bag, and before they had these nice coffee bags, and they had like some text on the back, and they said what the tasting notes are, and they had like a little message from the founder, and then they post these new bags, and it's a brown craft bag. It just says the name of the coffee, has the company logo, and it says the tasting notes. And then somebody inevitably will say on social media, our new bags are so simple. Our coffee speaks for itself, so we don't need to say anything else on the bag. And, I don't think coffee speaks for itself anymore, because there's really good coffee almost everywhere. So I think, relying on that, and like I said, I still see this. I see this frequently. Like every couple of weeks I see this. So it's not something that only happens every now and then. People typically, people are convinced that the coffee ought to speak for itself, and that should be enough.
Yeah.
And, I love great coffee, and I do think coffee can speak for itself if you're trying the coffee. But if you're a customer, like I said, and you're looking at, the Facebook page of 10 shops in a city, trying to figure out where should I visit, and, where can I invest and become part of a community, the coffee doesn't speak for itself to them. They're just looking at images.
To say nothing of the fact that they are getting it all from usually the same importer. So that it's not so unique that unless you have some robust direct trade thing, but most consumers would, struggle to identify the top end nuances between your Colombian Nano lot and a Supremo from the coffee down the street necessarily. So it muddles it even more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that just generally, the problems that we have are understandable, and they've been handed down to us. And, I don't think it's any coffee professional's fault if they don't have incredible messaging, and because, this has largely been taught to us, and something that's been happening in the industry for, a couple decades. But I think it's time to move on, and I think it's okay to move on, and we can do so authentically without being gimmicky, without being inauthentic or like untrue to who we are. So I think there are ways to move forward. That makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. What is the default then when customers look at a website, like 5-10 different websites, and they all see the same thing? My guess is that they're going to say, well, I like the labels better, or the price is better, or it's near my house, or something like that. And it seems like those default things, those default decision-making points are elements that maybe we would rather, like, we wouldn't purposefully market ourselves as having the prettiest bags in order to drive business, but it seems like we're almost asking people to differentiate us based on, what they fill in that blank we leave them. Yeah.
I see this all the time. So, I've been writing about some of this stuff for a while, and I inevitably get comments of people saying, Well, consumers, they really just want to pick the coolest looking bag. They really just want to, it's really just about, does the bag capture their attention? And if so, that's what they're going to buy. And so there, these kind of default assumptions about how people make purchasing decisions. And, that might be true for, for a coffee at the grocery store. When there are 30 bags next to each other, they might just pick the one that looks coolest. But that's not really a way to build a sustainable business, because, at some point somebody's got to come along with a cooler bag, and they're going to choose that one instead. So you only have that customer's loyalty for as long as you're the cool or novel. You have the cool or novel packaging. So there, and that's not to say that exceptional, well-designed packaging is not important, but that it should really enhance something else, not just the packaging itself. The packaging should enhance the relationship that you have with your customers. What is meaningful about your brand to customers?
Well, so that leads to the question of, what are the solutions for these problems, first of all? Because, there is a lot of pressure to answer these questions, especially when most people that are opening coffee shops are going from business plan to shop within a year. That's if you're listening to this, hardly enough time. Especially if you've got limited coffee experience and industry experience, it's way too little time. But B, it's just the money you invested, the amount of time you have before you need to start paying rent. You need to start making decisions about these things, and you start down the wrong path, maybe, or a path that is not necessarily deep. It's not great. It's not a great foundation necessarily, but it is the path you chose. This company does it, and they're successful. Ergo, if I do it, I'll be successful. But it seems like a bit of a false equivalency right there.
Yeah. So I think right now, whether you're just getting started or you've been around for a while, I think the primary objective for communication right now needs to be clarity. And you spoke about this at the start of the pandemic about, it's essential that you clearly demonstrate how customers can purchase from you, where they need to go. Are you doing drive-through, curbside, whatever it is, your process for, how customers can interact with you right now, that needs to be completely explicit. Say it very clearly, put it as like a pinned social media story on Instagram, on Facebook, whatever you need to do at the top of your site. No customer should have any question about how to buy coffee from you. So it should be very, very clear and easy for them to do that. Any questions that they have, any uncertainty that they have about how to visit your store, that creates sort of friction, hesitation, and chances are they're going to visit some other place where they know specifically. I pull up to this spot, I put my order in on so-and-so such web page, and they'll bring it out to me. And nobody wants to show up and have no clue what to do. So clarity is really, really important there. There's so much pressure to not go anywhere. If somebody's not sure how to visit, how to buy from you, they probably just won't show up. So I think clarity beats almost everything else right now. And I think that's going to be the case continuing on, because this has forced us to be more clear and more explicit about those kinds of things. So I think the bar is way higher now than it was 6 months ago. So that's definitely a place to start. Be very clear about how people order from you, where to go, what apps, yada yada, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it also means that in order to be clear about something, and we see this a lot when people are arguing online or whatever. Today, in the environment we're in today, it's easy for us to get information, but it's hard for us to know why it means something to us, or to clarify. Like, instead of having an argument, we say, well, go to this website. They say it better, because we actually aren't very clear about what's going on in our own mind about hardly anything anymore, because everything's so busy. And so it seems like, you're going to need to be a little bit more clear with yourself before you're actually clear with other people. So in order to do that, so I want to get into some of the solutions here for this problem, because I know you've got them. You've been writing about this a lot, and what would you say is the first step in not only discovering that clarity, but also just sort of taking it and making it a part of your business, so that it's not just up to you to do it, but it becomes just a institutionalized clarity, if you will.
Yeah. Let's get tactical here. So a lot of the work that I do is what I would call brand messaging work. And so it's about what messages are important to our brand that we can use as a filter for what we write on our website, on social media, the ways that our baristas speak to customers, how they talk about our coffees, how they talk about why we're even here. So brand messaging, what I suggest is creating sort of a little guide for yourself that you can use that acts as that filter, something you can always refer to. And I think people try to do this when, in like, small business courses and books, they have, write your mission, write your values. And, sometimes those things can be pretty helpful, but often we kind of go back to those tropes, which is unfortunate. So I think there are some better exercises that you can use to land at messaging, at your values in a way that is authentic, true to your business, true to who you are, but that can be really, really practical and more meaningful than kind of the standard write your mission, write your vision statement. And, because those things tend to, they get put in a binder and, stuffed away on a bookshelf, and, and then nobody knows what those things are.
That's where all good visions go.
Yeah. So, okay. So, brand messaging guide. It's like everybody a lot of people have a visual branding guide. It's like your logos, your colors, and people call that the branding guide. That's kind of the popular term for that. But I think it's actually kind of frustrating, because to me, that's just like the visual side. Your actual brand is not how you look. It's your reputation. It's how customers feel about you when they buy from you. It's the relationship that they have with you. So I think calling the visual stuff the brand guide kind of bothers me, because I think we should go a lot deeper than that. So, okay, so let's talk about some specific things that you can do. So this is a quick one, an exercise where, maybe 5 minutes. So everyone sells good coffee. We know that. Most of us make it the same way. Our roasting processes are very similar. Most shops do not do something exotic or super different than the other shop down the street. So we need to find some sort of value, some sort of, hook that is really important to us, that is also going to be important to our customers. So one thing I like to suggest people do is, pen and paper, and ask a question: who do you fight for? So, are you fighting for the coffee lover who just needs a good pick-me-up every morning? Are you fighting for the first responders who need, reliable energy and who also want to taste delicious? Are you fighting for hardworking blue collar people who just need something reliable and tasty and simple? Identify who it is you're fighting for. And it's okay to think about that. So you can look back at your mission and vision, and I'm going to guess that in there somewhere you can find this information. You might have to think. You might have to ask a couple levels of why. So if your mission is like, we want to serve the best coffee to our community, ask why. Why do you want to do that? Is it because your community is made up of passionate, hardworking people? Is your community made up of a certain type of person? Keep asking why. Go a little bit deeper and find somebody that you fight for. So the next question is, what do you fight against? And so this could be things that make you really angry. So you can say, what makes me angry? A stale coffee at the grocery store, that makes me angry. Thoughtless coffee drinking. So when you just drink coffee for the caffeine and you don't give any sort of thought to the farmers or the baristas or just the wonder of delicious coffee, that makes me disappointed. So I want to fight against that. Inequality in the coffee industry, does that make you angry? So write down who you fight for, what you fight against, and when you put those two things together, you have a person you can passionately relate to and a common enemy you can fight together. So not every business is going to work with this exercise, but I think everyone should try it because I think it can be very revealing.
So in a follow-up there, I think when I hear fighting against, and then I hear things that make you angry, I think a lot of people default towards the personification of those things. Like you could do that exercise and say, well, we hate Starbucks. And which itself is a trope, by the way, right? So that trying to differentiate yourself by saying who you're not, but like how do you differentiate between something that's obviously antagonistic versus something that's helpful by, when you're listing out, okay, this makes me angry and I'm fighting for this, but keep it in a constructive way that actually feeds a sustainable messaging and marketing plan for your business?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. So I think that, as we move forward, coffee businesses, businesses in general. So we have this like the creator sort of economy, the passion economy of people that are interesting, they're engaging, and we're seeing it kind of spill over into just the general business world of businesses that are opinionated, that have clear values that stand for them, and that demonstrate. Not just in their messaging, but in the day-to-day workings of the business. Those companies are building followings faster. Those followings are more loyal, more engaged. It's okay to be opinionated. It's okay to have strong values and to demonstrate them very clearly. And in your day-to-day business, I think the future is going to reward opinionated brands, and we're already seeing that with creators and individuals, but it's definitely spilling over into the business world generally. So it's okay to be a little bit antagonistic, but if it feels inauthentic, then don't do it. So what you can do is you can ask, why does this make me angry? Why is this something I want to fight against? And you will find that underneath that frustration, underneath that anger is a hope for something better. So maybe if you want to fight against stale grocery store coffee, that's a little bit cliche. I think maybe that's one that is a little overdone. So I would suggest ask the why, go deeper, and maybe it's because, maybe that's because fresh coffee is the kind of coffee that that actually makes you happy, whereas stale coffee withholds some sort of happiness from you because it's not, all the flavor and freshness isn't there. If you're fighting against if inequality in coffee makes you angry and that's what you want to fight against, it's because you believe that the world can be better and that we can all participate in a more equitable system. And so I'd say about sustainability and equality, I think that has to be backed up by tangible action, and those things need to be explicit because otherwise it sounds like lip service. So yeah, it's okay to be antagonistic. If you don't want to be antagonistic, and switch it over, ask the why, and reframe it as the hope, as a hope for something better, a hope for a better world, a hope for happier people, a better community, whatever that hope is. So I think that's how you can turn that around if you don't want to be antagonistic.
Oh, it's good. Yeah. I mean, obviously there's benefit to having a common thing to fight against. And I'm glad that you brought that up because there is constructive ways to deal with anger or to use anger to fuel something, and also that hope. And especially I'm glad you brought up the idea of like putting actions to your values, because we just actually put out an episode for Shift Break about the values actions gap. And that usual, where the vision goes to die in the binder underneath the storage closet or whatever. The vision is get through this shift. That's pretty much it for most people. Or just pay the quarterly taxes. That's my vision right now. But I forget what my vision was when I wrote my business plan. Especially that's true if you don't actually come back to it with actions and you can't see it actually taking place. So in the midst of all this, when you're sitting down to create that vision and that have a holistic approach to what your brand is. You mentioned most people use different or similar types of roasting. Now there's exceptions to that, and where you might, I guess, want to highlight the differences that some people really like. They're the only air roaster in the city, and they think it really makes a difference in their coffee and the development they use, or they use a Bellwether, which is zero emissions coffee roaster, right? What's the more responsible way to lean on those differences? And I say responsible to say not to make it the crux of who you are, but to still use it while you're developing this holistic brand image.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's some interesting research that's been coming out in the last year or so that indicates that 2020 is the first year that customer experience is the most important purchasing factor for customers than the product or service itself. And that's across the board. And that's especially true in markets that are saturated and have a lot of options like coffee. So I would say there are two sides to this. One is if you do something that is different, you have every right to use that in your marketing, and you should, because not many people can say that. Most coffee shops, we tend to do the same things and, have the same sorts of processes and serve coffee similar ways. And so, if you make drinks that, with a certain ingredient, or if you have a Bellwether roaster, or, some other type of technology that you use to be different, I would say lean into that. And I don't think it's gimmicky, and I don't think that, you're marketing out of nothing, something like that. There's kind of this thing of, well, they might market on one feature, but the truth is everyone, a lot of people have similar features to how they do business, how they roast or brew coffee. But the thing is, if you have even a little bit of difference, I think it can be an important thing to lean into, and to maybe not let it be, what your whole business is focused around, because, processes change, technologies change. So I think it's more important to have an emotional side, but I think you should lean into whatever those sort of feature process differences are. But like I said, the experience is becoming the most important aspect of purchasing products or services at all. So it's more important that customers feel attached, feel engaged on an emotional level. It's more important that they believe what you're doing is meaningful and that it matches their values. And when somebody buys a product that they know is a great fit for their lifestyle, what they value, what they hope for the world, they want to support small business, they want to support sustainable sourcing, they want to support hiring veterans, any of these things that are kind of like value approaches to doing business. Those are the things that really create that experience on a deeper, more meaningful level. So lean into the features that you have. If you do something different, I would say absolutely go for it. But just remember that the emotional investment is the long-term play, because more people are going to get Bellwethers. More people are going to hire veterans. Inevitably, more people are going to use air roasters, as more and more shops open. So go for the emotional side is the long-term. That emotional meaning, the meaningful side is what is going to grab people and captivate them. Even as other shops do things that are similar to you.
Yeah, you're connecting with them in the reason why they would purchase a product to begin with, because it's promising something, right? It's going beyond just the product itself. I don't want a car because I want a car. I want it because I can use that car for something else in my life that's enriching, like going to watch a meteor shower or get groceries, or anywhere in between, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I say go for the emotional side, and I think that's it's hard. You can't really do that if you're just saying we have the highest quality coffee. That's not really emotional. And, that's not really something that somebody is going to really feel connected to on, like on a meaning level. Maybe they'll connect to it in kind of like an intellectual, like we're both pursuing good, high quality stuff. But, you can even turn high quality into something that's more of like, I had one company I worked with a while back where they switched around that high quality to not just be about high quality coffee. We pursue high quality, but we pursue things that are handmade the right way, kind of like old, like nostalgia. If we're reaching into that nostalgia of like classic cars that last forever, and the KitchenAid mixer from the 80s that still works in grandma's kitchen, and that kind of thing. So there are ways to turn that around, and where you can bring that emotional side in, and bring that meaning in. So that's what I always suggest doing. So the features are helpful. Bring in the emotions, and we're kind of getting a little bit back into more theory a little bit, but I think that you can make this really practical. Just when you do the stand for something, stand against something exercise, just write some thoughts down. It's very simple, and I think ideally thoughts keep flowing once you get started. You have like blank page syndrome, and you're not quite sure exactly what you're doing, but you just kind of write some stuff out, and you kind of like unlock some some channels of thought that it kind of starts to keep flowing. So I would say, as you're thinking these things, write it down and just kind of let your hand keep moving, because more thoughts will come out about what is authentic to you and what matters to you that you can use in your marketing.
So there's a lot of things you could write down, and you're inevitably have your mind, your real estate in your mind is going to be taken up with your own thoughts and the stuff that you have absorbed through your own coffee education, stuff that you didn't even realize was not plagiarized. But there was a case, I forget what song it was with the Beatles. They were taken to court because there was an oldie song. I think it might have been from the Shondells or something like that, that the court ruled it was accidental plagiarism or subconscious plagiarism, because they had no intent of plagiarizing it, but it was just in their mind so much because they grew up around that music, and they accidentally wrote a song that sounded very similar. And it's kind of like we're doing now, but when we write a brand message, we could be borrowing somebody else's brand message, and it seems like we're going to need to figure out how to figure out like that a good one is that is authentic to who we are, and is not so much based on what we're just borrowing from other people's examples. So talk to us a little bit about that in how we go about getting that brand message.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it starts off with this process of investigating who you are and what matters to you, right? So, the existing brand, what you're already doing. You don't have to make stuff up, right? So you can look at past things that you've written to be re-inspired about why you started. You can ask your customers, what makes them really happy, why do they keep coming back, and they will give you feedback that maybe you didn't anticipate, but that is authentic to your company because you're already doing it, and your customers pick up on that. So there's this, we're starting off by pulling out things that already exist. And so turning that into something that's really practical, into a brand message that is distinct is, I think there are a few sort of ways that you can go about this. So once you have those things, you kind of have, okay, these are some strong values we have. These are maybe it's like some strong opinions that we have. Here's what customers say make us really happy. Here's how we want to sound. We want to sound, passionate or maybe independent, or identify a few of those things, and then it's time to really put it down into your brand messaging guide, and that will be sort of the filter for things. A practical guide that you can you can just whip out on at any point and use to kind of help guide things through. So you're taking what exists, and then let's put it into a message. So there are a few ways that you can do this. So one is you can lean into a personal story, or some sort of personal transformation. So a lot of companies the founder went through some sort of traumatic experience, or they were living a life that was not rich and meaningful to them, and they decided they needed to change things, and they want to share that. So there's a way to use a personal narrative to engage with people, especially if you have some sort of meaningful transformation, some sort of meaningful epiphany, something like that captures a lot of meaning, captures values. If you were just like, well, I was a barista and I liked coffee, and so I wanted to start my own shop. Well, first of all, I bet there's more to your story than that. But if there's really not, that honestly, that's okay. You can just start a coffee shop because you love coffee. But maybe that's not a good story to build the brand message from. Okay. Another sort of avenue to go by is to aspire to something exceptional. So people love bold missions. People love ambitious people, ambitious visions. So if you were after something fearlessly, that could be something really interesting to sort of use as the filter of your brand message. So maybe that's paying a minimum of $4 per pound of coffee, green coffee, or paying all of your staff an unusually high salary, or having health insurance for your team. If there's something that is a little unusual and you have a big dream, then people will latch onto that, because they love to see, people love dreamers, people love the underdogs, customers want to see they want to see people exceed, and exceed what is possible, what seems possible, what seems normal. So if you aspire to something exceptional, that's a good way to go. Another one is to support an honorable cause. So if you and this is kind of related to the previous one, but if you frequently donate to a charity, if your baristas donate time to a local nonprofit, if you have connections with initiatives happening in your town or in your state or whatever, I think people enjoy feeling like what they contribute to is other than just what they buy. So, I don't just buy a cup of coffee. I buy a cup of coffee that means down the road, some homeless person gets access to a sleeping bag and shelter, down the road, or maybe foster nonprofit has more resources to help give kids a good life. I think if there's some sort of honorable cause you support or partner with in any way, I think that can be a good way to go. If you target a precise audience, so maybe one of the absurd examples of this is a Black Rifle coffee, and I think they're kind of way out there for most people who are listening, but they have a really precise audience. They are looking for people who are involved in the military, who are really above and beyond patriotic, and macho explosions. They have a very specific person that they're going after, and they really, really lean into that audience. So there's a way to do that is more tactful and a little less abrasive. So there are lots of
a little less polarizing.
Yeah, less polarizing. That's a good way to put that. So yeah, but there are lots of companies where it's like we were firemen, and we tried to employ firemen, or we were veterans, we try to employ veterans, and so I think there are lots of great ways to go about that are not polarizing. Yeah. And if you do things differently, that's another thing too. Like I said, if you use a bellwether, if you pull your shots, with the with like the lever machine, there's a way to do that too. But I think that becomes a little less emotionally rich typically when you're kind of marketing on features like that. So take what is authentic to your brand, what you feel strongly about, what your customers notice about you, why they stick around, and pick an avenue. And I know that it can be scary to pick one thing, or maybe one or two things to kind of focus on, because you don't want to leave people out. And that's definitely a hesitation that I run into a lot, is people say, well, if I, half of my customers are teachers, half of my, a lot of my customers are, a certain type of person, or they care about a certain thing. if I focus on that, will I cut out everyone else? And the answer is you might cut out some, and that's a little bit of a bummer. But some people who maybe do not really engage with I would buy from a firefighter or a veteran-owned coffee shop because I want to support those people, even if I'm not exactly their target audience. I want there to be good avenues for people to find jobs after those kinds of things. So there are people on the sidelines who will be happy to still support you, but the reality is you will lose some people, but that's okay, because the people who you keep will be really, really engaged. They'll be long term. They'll be with you for the long term, and they're going to bring along people who also feel strongly about those things. When we talk about word of mouth marketing, nobody goes to their friend and says, "You've got to try this coffee. Like, this coffee is amazing, and like this company is really incredible." They don't say that about companies that feel vanilla or boring or standard. Nobody goes and says, "Dude, you gotta check out this coffee company. It's just mundane. It's just coffee. It's just like every other coffee shop." Nobody says that. You go to somebody and you say, "You won't believe what they do or what they stand for, and like I really enjoy how they focus on this one aspect, and how they support this cause." So people will share things that are meaningful, things that are important to them, and so by leaning into some of these things, you might cut some people out who don't feel very strongly about those things. But I'd say that's okay, because the upside can be pretty significant in terms of the loyal emotional following that people are willing to give you when they feel really connected.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you some pushback on that, and I'm interested to hear what you think about this, because on one side, I see how being clear with things that are important to you in your brand messaging are really critical, that you establish those early on, and because it's your business, right? And it's your company, you want to have this clarity there. But you also, when you're looking at where we are in the industry right now, we're talking a lot about accessibility, right? So we don't want to seem elitist, and sometimes when historically, elitism in coffee has looked like product-based elitism, right? Just we don't have to-go cups. We do have no coffees under $5 here. So there's a lot of elitism that we're trying to undo. But how do we ride the line between differentiation in the sense that you're just talking about, by having kind of a more targeted approach to marketing, while at the same time being accessible to people who, they don't want to necessarily, be confronted with a message every time they turn a corner in your coffee shop, I just wonder there has to be some kind of a balance here, or else we are eliminating people. Not only from our shops, but even potentially as eliminating people that could get on with the message, like if they had the opportunity to just interact with the brand free from what could easily become sort of a bludgeoning of marketing, if you will. So talk about the balance there, accessibility and differentiation.
Yeah, a bludgeoning of marketing. That's a incredible phrase. I might have to steal that. Thank you.
Feel free.
Yeah. Okay. So there's definitely a way to take this too far, and I think, I think we see it in coffee companies that have a landing page, right? And it's like, it takes you like 10 minutes to scroll down this page, because it's like they have all this crazy information, and they have a million testimonials, and they have like comparison charts and all these things, and it feels just like way over the top. And it's like, okay, well, why do you have to go to all these links to talk to me about your business? Like, it should be simpler. So I think there are kind of levels of intensity, right? So, and it kind of depends on how you're interacting with customers. So, somebody who's looking on Google, looking on Facebook to find a shop to visit, or trying to decide, which shop of 4 should I visit? If if they're not a customer, they need something to kind of hook their attention. They need some sort of value, some sort of message, some sort of story that makes them say, okay, I'm going to try this shop. This one looks more interesting to me. This one seems like maybe they're a better fit for what I value and the kind of coffee that I like. So I'm going to go there. If they're an existing customer, they're, at some point they're more familiar with what you stand for. And even if you haven't been very clear or explicit about it, existing customers, they'll know what you stand for because they're going to have those experiences in the shop. And everything is top down. So whatever your values are as an owner or a manager, that's going to flow to your baristas. Your baristas are going to communicate that to your customers, even non-verbally, and your customers are going to pick up on those things. So they don't need quite as intense language. They doesn't have to be quite as explicit because they kind of get it just naturally by visiting the shop or ordering coffee online. But it's helpful for them to have small reminders of what is meaningful, what is valuable. So in the shop, you don't have to be very explicit because people are organically catching on to what your messages are, what your values are by interacting with the baristas, by interacting with your products, and how your shop functions. So that's the lowest level of intensity that's needed for a brand message. I would still have something there because people will just wander in from off the street. They won't come in from online and have some exposure to your message. They'll just be driving by and decide, let's try it out. And so you still want to be, helping people who are coming in for the first time identify what matters to you and why it might matter to them. And, but it doesn't have to be very intense. So a bludgeoning of marketing, I'd say stagger the intensity of how you communicate these messages. Online, it needs to be pretty heavy. And in your existing communication with customers, it can be pretty low. Mm-hmm. And then in store, it can be much, much lower. As long as you have a touch point here or there. So somebody who's coming in can pick up on that subtly.
That's really funny because that same way of going about the intensity is how people need to do, like podcasting, for example. You can't see my face, so I have to be a little bit more animated. And, I'm not the most animated person. So anyone hearing that and be like, really, Chris, animated? But yeah, believe it or not, this is maybe more animated than I might be in person, maybe less sometimes. But the fact is you can't see me. You can't pick up on the nuances. And so I have to make up for that lack somehow. So the context lack seems like is what you need to use as a guide for, like if it's online, you need to cut through all of the context of where they are watching your website and what their thoughts have been up until the moment they clicked on there. So the explicit nature of that needs to be, relative to how intense their context is or saturated it is with you as a brand. And so one of the, I think, last things that we should talk about here is how to, we talked about online, but like where we want people to see this message, like how to physically go about putting it out there. We talked about the website. What are some practical ways, once we've gone through all of these exercises and written out stuff, what's the best place to go to next, put it out on this, that, the other thing? How do we do that? Where are those places?
Yeah. So, in terms of an order of importance, I would say wherever that intensity is needed the most, that's where it's going to have the highest impact probably. So that's probably going to be social media. So, in your social media bio, a lot of coffee shops, they'll have like the hours, they'll have like a, find us here and a link to Google Maps or, something like that. I would say that's at a really, really, really important spot to have some sort of meaning statement. So we're a coffee shop that loves, such and such value, or, we make coffee in a way that makes the world a better place via this method or, this, way that we do things. So it's essential that, that's probably where half your customers are finding you. That's kind of just a guess, but, so many people use social media, and that is certainly the case right now and probably will be for the foreseeable future while people aren't necessarily just driving around hanging out. So I think, we're looking at places to go visit on our phones before we go, because we want to know, are they open? How do we order? All those kinds of things. So that's probably the first touch point for most people at the moment. So in that first paragraph of your bio, make sure it's not just we serve coffee in such and such city, but we serve coffee because we care about this, and we want people to feel welcome for this reason. We source all of our coffee from sustainably, or we serve, we hire veterans, or we want people to feel really happy and think coffee is a special way to do that. So finding some sort of meaning statement that goes right up there. Let's see. Another thing is, I guess, your website. So a lot of people will click on a website to find more information about whether you're open, what kinds of products you have, things like that. It's so common to see coffee websites where it'll just say serving high quality coffee to the Lubbock, Texas community, or something that's kind of it's clear, and that's good. But once again, we're missing that meaning. So something that for people to really connect to. So I put that on your website. Let's see, coffee packaging. If you're a roaster, or if you white label coffee and you have your own packaging, that's a really important place to put that, because your customers will see that throughout the week, or throughout a couple weeks as they're drinking your coffee. Kind of get a subtle reminder of what those values are, other than just coffee from Mexico tastes like chocolate and spice. That's good, but people will engage if you give them a little bit more than that. Okay, other places. If you do e-commerce, automated emails, when somebody adds a coffee to their cart and then they leave, maybe they get a abandoned cart email, or if they make a purchase, they'll kind of get like a hello and thank you email. Places like that are fantastic places to recommunicate, hit on summarize what those values are, what your core messages are. And, that way when they've made a purchase, or when they're considering, they have a little more of a, connection to either reassure them that they've made a good decision in purchasing your coffee, or that they went away from the site for some reason, but maybe they should come back because you're a good value fit. So emails like that are good. Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I'd say everywhere. Start to put it everywhere.
I feel that you're basically, it almost seems like we would want to sit down and have like a mind map. If people don't use mind maps, like using something like Simple Mind is easy to do. But then look and, type out on one of those where messaging at all happens. Because if you have interaction with a website and it has a ton of culture, like, so Slack, as an example, you got me thinking about how when something goes wrong with a website, one of the ways I know that they've thought a lot about their branding and their messaging is the "oops, something went wrong" message is branded. And you know what I mean? Like, it seems that the people who do it well have a message that's funny or quirky, and it fits the persona of their brand, rather than simply a Arrow 404 message popping up that's just standard. It's like the details and the sub levels of communication have to be accounted for too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say the 404 page is when you type in the wrong URL, I'd say that's probably above and beyond what most people need to do. But you're right. It's a clear indication when you see that page and it says, it's something a little cute, and you can tell it's branded, or maybe a little funny, or maybe it sends you to some helpful links that and offers, were you looking for this or this or this? That's how they've really paid attention to how that experience is going, down at a very granular level. I'd say that's probably above and beyond what most people need to worry about, but that's how far you can take it. And when you land on a 404 page like that, and you see that quirky message, like, you can't help but smile, and that really does,
right.
Capture your attention a little bit. So that's a good thing to do if you have the bandwidth. But I think starting with the place where the most eyeballs are going to be is probably the best place to start, which is social media, most likely.
Yeah, great point. Now, you've shared a lot This has really been a rich time of just learning what we need to do, practically speaking, to make our brand stand out and actually get clear about who we are. If you were to kind of encapsulate your message for coffee shops now, especially now, because we're still in the midst of this time where we're fighting for our businesses and largely doing that in remote ways. What would your message and hope for coffee shops be right now?
Yeah, good question. I think, to sort of summarize, it's that, I spent a lot of time at the coffee shop with the owner trying to figure out why are these marketing things that we're doing not really working? Like, we tried ads, we tried, sort of like sponsored content in the newspaper and all the, these things that we thought would bring a lot of people in, that would be meaningful to the business, they just kind of fell flat. And, I'd say that's such a typical experience in the coffee shop world. And I'd say that there is hope beyond that. And there's a way so that, when any sort of marketing that you do, when you have a clear and a captivating, a meaningful message, everything that you do beyond there, every kind of marketing that you do will be elevated to a level that really matters to your customers. So, I think the message is everyone is we're all learning as we go, and this is kind of a newer thing for our industry that I think is starting to happen a lot. So I'd say it's okay if you're scared about trying something or you want to get it wrong. And I would say it's okay, and it's not going to be perfect. It doesn't have to be. It just has to be meaningful. And so it's okay to iterate. It's okay to experiment and try new things. And I think it's important to do that too, because everyone is communicating online primarily, and just the bar for clear and meaningful communication is so much higher because of the pandemic and of everyone communicating on the same channels now. So I think it's important that some experimentation happens, and I think there are helpful exercises to help you along. But a big part of it is just feeling out what matters to me and what do I want to be about. So I think finding that authenticity and something you can use to be the filter to kind of propel you forward is just an important thing to do moving on.
Well, you've certainly helped us get a grip on what that is going to be, and we've got a lot of work cut out for us and fulfilling work. But this has really been helpful again, Garrett, and I appreciate you stopping by the show and sharing these things with us. How can people reach out to you and learn more about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, well, I spend time primarily on LinkedIn and Twitter. Twitter, I think my handle is at the Garrett Oden. I also do a lot of writing at coffeemarketingschool.com, and I'm going to create a little page because I have written out a little more in-depth thoughts about some of these things we've talked about, and I have a couple of other exercises that people can see the details on pretty quickly. So I'll create a page for coffeemarketingschool.com/keys for keys to the shop. And there, I'll link out to some blogs that I've written that I think will be helpful. I've got a few other resources there to help move things along if you're feeling stuck or we want some extra help on something like this.
Excellent. Thank you for doing that, Garrett. And thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Okay, well, I hope that you enjoyed that episode and that it really did give you some ideas that you can implement right away. I want to encourage you to take the time necessary to apply these things in a thoughtful way over time. Sometimes in coffee, I think because we're also busy, and especially in the urgency of the moment, it can kind of weaponize our busyness in a way. We can tend to want to rush things into existence. Take the time to be able to put these in practice so that they are supported, they're sustainable, and you can manage them well and build slowly. If you have the capacity to go faster, then sure. But going through the solutions that Garrett proposed, these are things that require a lot of self-knowledge, a lot of business, knowledge of what your business is all about, soul searching and then really crafting something that can live well into the future right alongside your business. So I'll bet you that this transforms your business and creates a lot more clarity for your customers and drives real meaningful differentiation and better business in the end. So as Garrett said, you can find him on LinkedIn and Twitter. I'll have the links to that in the show notes. Also, for more information on this subject and more, you can go to coffeemarketingschool.com/keys. And there you'll be able to get into these ideas in a little bit more depth than what we covered today. So a big thank you to Garrett for joining me on the show. Wonderful insights, and we thank you so much for the work you do, helping us deliver our message with excellence to our customers. Now, if you want to contact me, again, as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, just reach out, chris@keystotheshop.com, whether that's for inquiring about consulting over the phone or on-site, coffee consulting and coaching, or you want to just leave feedback for the show. Let me know how we can improve the show. Maybe there's subjects that you really think should be covered here that haven't been covered yet. And Lord knows, I think it's like 350 something now episodes. Really, when you think about what we can talk about in the industry, there's a lot more stuff out there. And so that's what's exciting about this industry, right? And I'd love to hear your feedback, maybe how this show has helped you in your business and your career. Send all that to chris@keystotheshop.com. And that is it for our show today. Thank you again so much for joining me. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.